Today is our fourth lesson in the unit of three-dimensional solids, or learning with the screen. We will identify and create nets of three-dimensional solids. So first we're going to start with a review from what we were working on yesterday, which is identifying three-dimensional solids, and then also naming them. So on the screen right now, you will see on the left side, there's a whole bunch of names of three-dimensional solids. And then on the right side, there are some representations of those solids. So what we're going to do is just look at each solid and then match it with its name. We're going to start right here with this solid. On the base of this solid, we see a triangle. We could go through and kind of do process of elimination here on these listed names. Only one of them is named triangular prism. And if I know the shape of my base is a triangle and that the other sides that lead me up to that top matching shape of a triangle, then that tells me this is a prism. So right away, I'm going to match these two. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and look at this shape. Again, I see that the base of this is a rectangle and that the sides are also rectangular. And the top is the same shape as the base, meaning this again is a prism, a rectangular prism. So I'm going to match those two. That's solid with its name. Okay, let's go ahead and look at this shape. I'm going to look at the top right here. I see that this figure has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. And that tells me that that polygon that is on top, which is the same as this base shape, is a pentagon. Meaning that this is a pentagonal prism. And I know it's a prism because the sides that connect the top and the base are rectangular. Also, the top and the base are the exact same shape with that pentagonal figure. Okay, now these next two are going to be a little bit tricky, but I'm going to actually try and just illustrate this with my voice and not use the pen on this shape because it's going to get a little bit tiny. I know it's a little bit difficult to see. I'm actually only going to look at half of this, and I think that will help us make our choice. That top part's a little bit easier to see, and I count 1, 2, 3 sides on half of this, which tells me the bottom part also has to have 3. I know 3 and 3 make a 6-sided figure as our base, and here's that same shape as right here. So that means that this is a hexagon, and the sides are rectangular, making this a hexagonal prism. Okay, again, process of elimination. That means that we only have our octagonal prism left, but let's try and check this out. I'm going to count the sides of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, checks out. 8-sided figure is an octagon. And here we have our octagonal prism. Okay, today we're going to spend some time talking about nets. Our learning target is identifying and creating nets of three-dimensional solids. We'll be doing a little less of the creating and a little bit more of just practicing seeing nets and naming the solids that they create. So the first thing, let's go ahead and look down here at this definition. I know it's a little bit small, but for us to do this identifying and creating, we need to understand what nets are. Nets are a flat or plane representation of a solid, and they can be folded up to create a solid. So I tried to do this pretty quick and it ended up a little bit messy, but I did put a cube right here, and then I tried to draw a representation of that cube as a net. So if you can imagine, it's kind of like you're putting your hand on top of the cube and then you're going to push down and it will open all the way up. You could do this at home with like a cereal box or a Kleenex box, and then you would be seeing a net of a rectangular prism. Okay. Now, one thing that's kind of cool about a net is we can't do it on here, but we can fold this net back up, and what we should be able to see or make is the same solid. Also, what should be happening when you look at a solid and then look at the net that makes that solid is you should notice that all of the faces are represented on your net. So for here with the cube, we know we have 6 faces, and all of the faces are the same size and same shape. They're all squares. Okay. So now we're going to do a little bit of practice with using what we know from yesterday to name the solid that is created by a net. And like I said on this video, we can't actually put these nets together or actually see them all folded up like we would if we were in our classroom, but we're going to do the very best we can. Let's go ahead and look at this net. I'm hoping that you're noticing that instead of us looking at a solid and labeling the base and the top, and the sides, and the edges, and the vertices, we can do that while we look at a net. I'm hoping you're noticing that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these faces of this figure on this net are rectangular, meaning that the two other shapes that are left are going to be our top and our base. So if we were to fold this up, these would kind of wrap around both of these shapes. And what we did yesterday was we worked on identifying solids and labeling their bases. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. I'm going to pick this one up here, the top figure, as our base of our net. Would be the base of our solid if we were able to fold it up. So I see that this base has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. That tells me that that base, or this polygon, this flat shape, is a pentagon. And if I folded that up, I have rectangular faces other than my base and my top pentagon, meaning that this would create a pentagonal prism. Okay, we're going to do the same thing, but this time with a new net, a net that will create a different solid. So again, we're going to start by looking at our net over here. Again, this is like if we had a solid and we pushed down on it with our hand and made it completely flat. So now it's just like the triangles that we were finding the area of in our last unit, or like a rectangle or a square. It might have a base and a height, but it does not have that third dimension to it to make it solid. So this is almost like a piece of paper laying on your desk. It is flat, okay? If we fold this up, or if we were able to fold it up, it would create a solid, and that's what we're trying to find today. We're working on identifying that. And once we get good at that, then we'll be able to draw and create our own nets and decide which figures or which flat shapes make up three-dimensional solids. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and look at this net. Now I see that 1, 2, 3, 4 of the faces are triangular. That should give me a hint. And if you can kind of visualize folding this up and each one of those triangular faces coming together to form a vertex, that should give us a big hint that this is going to be a pyramid. Because we know that that's what makes the difference between pyramids and prisms. If this was a prism, we would see a base that is the same as this square. Oh, hint, hint, hint. I just told you. Go ahead and look at the shape of the base. What do you notice? Well, you should notice it's a square. This solid that would be created by this net, by us folding this two-dimensional representation up into a solid, we would make a square pyramid. Okay, now we're going to get into some creating nets, and the ones that I have chosen to create today for us to practice this are very basic. Really what you need to know is what are the flat shapes or plane shapes that make up this solid. So what we're going to be dealing with when we look at this rectangular prism, and if you look here, you should be able to see them, squares, and then think about if we have one at the top and one at the bottom, how many squares will we need to draw as part of our net? 2. And then you know that a prism has 4 other rectangular faces. We can only see 2 of them right here, but we're also going to need to draw 4 of those longer rectangular faces as well. Now, I know this is hard to do when you don't have the solid in front of you and you aren't able to kind of fold up your net and see. If you do have scissors at home, I will include some net practice in our folder for today. If you have a printer and you're able to print them out, then you certainly can. But we're going to do the best we can with what we have right now. So I'm going to just draw a really rough net of this prism, and then I'm going to try and imagine myself folding it up, and hopefully we can make something that is a flat representation or a plane shape of this rectangular prism. Okay, I'm going to start with my top shape, which is a square. So that is right here. I just drew that. Now I am going to draw one of these rectangular sides that makes an edge with this top face right underneath it. Okay, so I'm going to draw that rectangle right here. And then I'm going to make this net pretty easy and simple. I know that underneath here, there is an equal and opposite square as the shape of my top. So I'm going to also draw that square here. Okay, not perfect, but it'll work for us. Now I've already covered one of these four rectangular faces. We're done with our squares. So now I just need to add three more in. So I am going to try and make them as similar as I possibly can. Well, they're not perfect, but if you can imagine, now we have our net, and remember, we know that there are six faces in all of this rectangular prism. Two of them are our squares, four of them are those same or congruent rectangular faces. Now, if I were to be able to fold this up and I folded this down, and then kind of like rolled this piece all the way around, I would be able to make these edges that are formed right there and right here, and we would have a wonderful looking rectangular prism. Okay, now we're going to try and make another net of another solid. Now, I am not going to include an image of this solid. So let's think about, I did that for a reason. Let's think about what we know about this solid, just looking at the name of the solid. So let's start with this part. This first name, pentagonal, tells us what the shape of our base is going to be. Now, we will get to this pyramid part later, whether that means that we need to draw two pentagons or just one. Okay, I'm going to start with one on my board right now. Okay, now I know that's not perfect, but that's the best pentagon that I'm going to get to right now. And you should be able to see that it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. Yep, penta check. That works. Now let's look at this part right here, pyramid, because that kind of tells us a lot about what the other faces, aside from that pentagon base, are going to be in our solid. Okay, pyramid, remember, that means that we're not going to draw two pentagons and then connect them with rectangles or squares. That means that off of each one of these five faces comes a triangle. And those triangles, when we draw this and we imagine the net folding up, will come together to form one vertex. Okay, so now I know that each one of my sides, each one of my five sides of my flat pentagon, I need to draw a triangle. And again, this is not going to be perfect. We're going to do the very best we can. Oh, it kind of looks like a star. Looks exactly like a star. So now, this is it. This is our net for a pentagonal pyramid. But think about if you could kind of push each one of these up until they meet at a vertex, then you would be able to form the solid from the net. And then it's also a good idea to double check. Think about what you know about a pentagonal pyramid. Yesterday we did some work with counting edges, faces, bases, vertices, all that kind of stuff. Think about how you could apply that to this to kind of check your work. I know that I have my base as a pentagon. That means I have one face there counting my base, and that each one of my five sides of my pentagon is going to come a triangle, an edge that meets at the triangle. So I would be adding 5 to that for a total of 6 faces. Does my figure have 6 faces? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, check. Good. Okay, this is the last one that we're going to practice with today. Again, we're working on creating nets of three-dimensional solids when we're really relying on all of our background knowledge we've built over the last couple days in naming three-dimensional solids and thinking about what we know about flat shapes to help us. I'm going to start by looking at this right here. Triangular tells me that this is going to be a three-sided figure that is going to be at the base of our three-dimensional solid. So what I'm going to do is just start with the triangle. I could have done a right triangle. That would have been okay too. I'm just going to start with this triangle right here. Okay, got it. That's my base. Now I'm going to look at this prism or pyramid word right here to give me a hint. Do I need to be drawing another base and then connecting that with rectangles or squares so I have a figure on top that is the same as my base? Or is this a pyramid where I need to have triangular faces that fold up and meet at one vertex. So a pyramid tells me that I need to have 1, 2, 3 triangular faces. And if we were able to take this and actually fold it up, push these sides together, and kind of build it back up as a solid, then we would see that these right here, and right here would all form to make that one vertex. So again, think about what you know about triangles to kind of help you check your work. That should help you decide how many faces should be in your net and should make sure that you're on the right track. So I know that my base is going to be one face, and then for each side of my triangular base is going to come a triangle. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 faces. Check.